Hello, everyone, and welcome to April 2023 on the 26th day for our monthly City of Annapolis Environmental Commission meeting. My name is Randy Rowell. I'm chair of the City of Annapolis Environmental Commission, and vice chair, she is actually absent today, Allison Colden. She had some traveling and things to do, so we'll be carrying on in her absence. So we could just go around and do our introductions. Let's start with maybe Racine.
Sorry about that. Racine Hodo, City of Annapolis.
I'll go next. Jenny Janis. Not with City of Annapolis.
And I'll go next, Marianne Marbury. I'm traveling, so I'm not going to burden you with my video.
Sorry.
Jeremy Hansen, Ward 5.
I'm Jackie Guile, the Deputy City Manager for Resilience and Sustainability. So I'm just, I'll be here for any questions you might have.
I'm Casey Ortiz of Planning and Zoning, filling in until Eric Lashinsky gets here.
Yeah.
I should have mentioned I'm Ward 6.
Yeah, thank you, Jenny. And this is how many meetings have you been to so far? Is this your second, third? Or?
Sorry, third.
Third, okay.
Yeah.
And how are things progressing with you? You kind of seeing the flow of things and everything?
Yeah, it's starting to get into the flow of things. I also am starting a landscape architecture business at the same time, so I've been kind of busy doing that as well.
Okay. What's the yeah, that's dope. Congratulations.
Thanks.
And Marianne, is this your third one as well?
This is my third one, yes.
Okay. How are things on your end on?
Actually, very good, very good. I'm very excited about working on the committee, especially in the area of the tree canopy, which is part of our priorities.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you very much. Yeah, we you know, as we've been looking into a lot of the science around what is the best or most sustainable practice that can build the best outcomes in our urban spaces, whether planting more trees or taking care of the ones we have. So clearing those invasives and such. So
Exactly. All actually, you mentioned all three great areas to work on.
yeah. Okay. So did everyone get a chance to look at the agenda? I'm not sure if I wasn't able to. And I appreciate everybody's understanding in my absence. I'm dealing with a few deaths in my family and things like that. So, but I'm back. And
Sorry to hear that.
yeah. So I think I missed the last two meetings. So happy to be back and getting in the swing of things myself. So bear with me a little. So did everyone get a chance to look at the agenda? Cool. And we're starting to get those out about a week earlier out going forward. So got our system in place. Talked about that a little bit before we started our meeting. Okay. So do we want to approve the Racine with the minutes from March? I'm not sure. That was sent out to everyone to approve.
Yeah, I sent out the minutes shortly, like a day or two after the last meeting. I could forward them again.
Can we vote to approve the minutes of March? Anybody motion?
I was also noticing, looking at the March minutes, that I don't think we went back and approved the February minutes.
Right.
Yeah, it was, there was a misunderstanding that the February minutes had, that you guys had them, but you didn't. So you do have to, when I sent the March minutes, I sent the February minutes as well.
Can we vote to approve both February and March minutes right now? Anybody want a motion for that?
That's Mary Ann. I'll make a motion to approve both the March and February minutes.
I'll second.
Right, so we'll go ahead and do that. Let's see. And tonight we have a pretty smooth evening of topics. Just want to drop on you all's radar if you haven't already, and I'll put some of these links, well, not necessarily in the chat, but I'll try to send these out in email throughout tonight. But a few things, you know, the recent Biden administration environmental justice announcement for his legislation, I thought that was pretty noteworthy in mentioning today. So if you haven't checked that out, it's pretty interesting readings and articles and things on that. Just looking at how that may affect some of the work we do. I know even just in science and research, it can be an important scope or lens to look at things from, and workforce development as well. So, and then also the governor, the Maryland, there was a new green space equity program that was just announced as well recently, which I thought was some pretty significant state legislation. So it's also something to check into or look at. And there was one more that's missing my mind right now, but come to me. And so on our agenda, the next thing we have pretty much is presentations. We have a guest speaker. It looks like he's not here yet. Eric Lashinsky.
He's going to be. He said we were going to start at about 7:30. So I think
Okay,
if you have other business to address first.
sure, no problem. We'll swing back around to that. So updates and presentations, outcome information sharing. This was basically a segment where we would talk about, you know, any updates from Racine or the city of Annapolis or any others. So with that, do you want to go and start with that, Racine and Miss Jackie?
Sure. Unless Racine has something particular she wants to start with, I'll jump in.
No, go ahead, Jackie.
Hello, guys. I haven't seen you in a while. First of all, Racine, did you send everybody my update, the project list for the resilience and sustainability?
No, I apologize. I did not.
Right, so every month I update that list. It's all the projects that I work on, and some of them are led by the resilience and sustainability staff, which is me and Racine, and our contractor, Climate Change Solutions. And some of them I start and then or partner with another department and hand off, but stay involved, some more, some less. And so it's just the list of everything that we're currently working on. And then as things close, I take them off. So I update that every month for the Environmental Matters Standing Committee. And at that time, I give it to Racine to forward to this group. So Racine, if you would send it out, even if you do it later tonight or tomorrow, even so the group can have it. And then anything I don't touch on, you're interested in, or you have questions about, you can just email me directly or call me. But I'll highlight a couple of things. The main thing that I wanted to start working on this month, but it's going to get bumped till May, is a real resilience plan for the city of Annapolis. We work on a lot of different plans, sometimes in our silos in different departments and offices. And we have a lot of resilience planning efforts, capital improvement projects, things like that we're working on, and they come at us fast and furious, or we're applying for grants, but we don't have a comprehensive plan. And some plans in some jurisdictions are a couple of pages, some are 10 pages, some are 200 pages. I think we should shoot for something in the middle. We have a lot of plans and projects we're already working on that we can reference and link to, but it's not only good for the general public to know about and to help our strategy and planning and grant making and funding strategies, but it's also, for the city council persons to at any time look at to see what we're doing for these commissions and boards to see, and to see where we have holes. And, it's an evergreen document that will be updated. So I did receive an inquiry about whether I needed help with such plan from this commission. I know there's some great experience and expertise in this area on the commission and interest, obviously. So I would like to start outlining it, would spend some time at the next meeting as part of the agenda working on this. And it may be that there's a smaller subgroup, a work group that forms to help me with it. But I will be better prepared to do that next month. Number of things came up this month that I got involved in. So, we have the comp plan will be part of that. Has environmentally sensitive areas and other sections, transportation, resilience building, capital projects, and some zoning changes in Annapolis 2040 ahead. There is a public water access plan, also planning and zoning worked on. We're working on a rec and parks plan. The hazard mitigation update is done every 5 years, and it will be completed this month by the Office of Emergency Management. We have an EV, electric vehicle strategy, that is being developed. That's with my consultant, Climate Change Solutions, Inc. And in conjunction working with all the departments, especially transportation, on the GEM circulators and the electric buses that are on order, the scooters and bicycles, e-bicycles and e-scooters. And also we have a grant from the Federal Transit Administration to buy up to 2 electric ferries and put in the infrastructure and the dock improvements that are needed with that. And I'm sure I'm leaving off, there's a cultural hazard mitigation plan, Weather It Together, and many more. And plus there's a whole list of capital projects, the city dock project being one really big one, that all will feed into this resilience plan, plus the work we're doing through the Resilience Authority. So there's that. And then I hope that Brian touches on the tree canopy goals and our progress towards them, and maybe changing those goals around a little bit later on. So I see Mr. Adams is here. And then the Chesapeake Bay Trust, the city of Annapolis, provides $300,000. This is the 3rd year we've done it, out of our watershed restoration fund to the Chesapeake Bay Trust to help us identify and then manage and allocate funds to nonprofits, homeowners associations, churches, etc., to put in stormwater mitigation projects. And we did a round of looking at the applications last week, and we will work on a short list and finalize it and make the awards probably in the next couple of weeks, but we have a meeting tomorrow on it. So I can't discuss them because this is a public forum any further than that, but we will be letting everyone know in the next couple of weeks whether or not their grant was awarded. And then, there's one other thing I was going to mention that might be of interest to you. We need to talk about trees. Mr. Adams may also speak about Replant Annapolis, which was a program we started last year that parallels the Replant Anne Arundel program, where tree troopers are trained in where to plant trees, what kind of trees to plant, and then the city provides funds to actually make the tree plantings happen. Last year, this group planted 108 trees between about 6 projects. And I think that was, total trees planted by the city, and Brian will correct me on this if I'm wrong, were 160. So 108 trees being planted by this group, that's significant towards the trees that were planted in total by the city. So this is a program that we hope to fund again this year so that it can continue and help us reach our tree canopy goals in the city. And I will leave it at that right now. When you guys receive the list of projects, if there's something that you would like to cover with me, you always contact me separately.
Do you know what the budget was that they allocate or would need to allocate for the replant Annapolis?
So we had allocated $30,000 towards it. There was a little kerfuffle with that. Director Johnson, the former director of Public Works, had said that he would use that $30,000 out of the Watershed Restoration Fund. However, he did not set up an actual fund with the Department of Finance. So there are two outstanding invoices, I believe, totaling $21,000 from fall plantings with Replant Annapolis that were not paid yet. And we're trying to figure out, and Mr. Adams may have the answers to this as well, where those monies are going to come from, if they're going to come from planning and zoning or the general fund, or there's a surplus in the general fund this year, and whether that will be part of his, the $30,000 will be part of his program request for tree planting this year.
Do you have any idea what, I mean, in your opinion, how you think that even happened, or what, how that mistake happened, or?
Well, I think because Director Johnson was, you know, he's fairly new to the city. He had never set up a fund like this before. He had thought you can use the Watershed Restoration Fund. He didn't go through all the proper steps of actually setting up that fund. So therefore, Department of Finance has no fund from which to allocate the payment of the invoices. And some of them were actually, the expenses that is, were incurred in FY22 and some in FY23. FY22 is completely closed, all those accounts already. So they will be paid. Watershed Stewards Academy, who runs the program for the city in partnership with us, will be paid. And out of some fund to be determined. And hopefully this program will be refunded at $30,000 this year in the FY24 budget. Brian, can you add on to that?
Yeah, so like you said, they've submitted the rest of their invoices. I turned those over to finance today, so hopefully we get those paid and cleared up. It was a total of 3 projects. They planted, like Jackie said, about 106, 108 trees. We've gotten a lot more interest this year in the tree trooper training, so we're hoping to have even more projects, but the funding is still a question, and I am currently working with our Public Works Department to actually fund the program this year from the Watershed Restoration Fund, because they do believe that this is a legitimate, you know, it's a legitimate source for funding this program. It was just a matter of documentation and budgeting issues this past year. So hopefully we'll have it moving forward. Yeah.
Good. And I noticed with the resiliency plan, you know, I noticed a lot of mention about downtown, but I didn't hear much mention about like some of the more underserved communities. And is there a resiliency plan that you have in mind that I hope would kind of speak to those communities, those EJ communities, which would maybe be a different approach than you may take, say, for example, with a downtown area type community.
So the resilience plan for the city of Annapolis will cover all areas of the city.
Oh, okay.
And there will be an equity lens placed on, you know, priority of projects where there are issues, you know, because resilience is not just about sea level rise. So I have to remind people from time to time, it's about access to services, transportation, food deserts, and practically everything, cybersecurity even. When we did the military installation resilience review, which is wrapping up this month, and the final will be available very shortly. The #1 resilience threat was cybersecurity. And so, you know, people don't think of it usually in terms of climate change impacts, but climate change impacts can affect many different essential services, but also there are other threats to resilience as well besides environmental threats. So it'll be comprehensive. This group will definitely, as I said before, I want them involved. I want your expertise and your experience, and to help, you know, I'm very short, small staff here with me and Racine and a contractor, so I can use all the help I can get on it. Thank you, Randy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the research has kind of shown a lot of funds have gone into more of these more affluent areas, but some of these, you know, these environmental justice communities could really serve for a lot of funds, resiliency funds and projects to kind of build up capacity in those communities.
Right. And if you look at just tree planting alone, just one little thing like tree planting will increase property values much faster in lower income communities than in other communities. It also brings people together, builds a sense of community, brings people outside, which helps with surveillance of the area, self-policing of the area. And it reduces the ambient air temperature so people can enjoy being outside, which improves air quality of life in general. I mean, there's lots of benefits just from one little thing like focusing on where we're planting trees. Just one small example. Brian, I wanted to ask you, where are we paying the current invoices? Out of what? What fund?
I don't have the answer to that. Katie, I think that Katie's handling that with finance. It's not coming out of P&Z as far as I know.
Okay. But I think we need to fund it again at the same level.
Yeah.
Randy, in answer to your question of about $30,000.
Yep.
Brian would have worked with the Watershed Stewards Academy this spring on additional plantings if we had had the invoices paid and we knew exactly where the money was coming from. Unfortunately, without Watershed Stewards Academy being paid yet, they were reluctant to go forward, and I don't blame them. And we'll get it together so that we'll be ready for fall planting.
Okay.
And along other trees, you guys probably all know that the group Save Our Trees was honored on Monday night with a citation for their work in removing invasive ivy from trees in Truxton Park. And I'm going to get the name wrong of the cove that's right by the post office in Eastport, Jones Cove, and working with those communities. And they reported that they saved 1,400 trees. I'm not exactly sure how they got to that number. What I asked them to do when they first started was keep track of how much in terms of acreage or square footage you're addressing as far as ivy removal. So that, because Brian doesn't have a budget for removal of ivy. So this group really does help the city in saving our trees, because Brian can plant trees, but they're not going to be as big as our large canopy trees that are being killed by the ivy.
Jackie, it's Marianne Marbury. I'm part of Save Our Trees. And
Right. Hi, Marianne.
Hi. And sorry, I don't have my video on. We in fact are counting the trees, but we're developing another method per your suggestion. So hopefully we'll move forward when we have that figured out.
Okay, great.
And actually, I also wanted to announce that the press release hasn't come out yet, but we've now become a program under the Watershed Stewards. So
wonderful.
We applied to them. We thought that was the best route to go. And, instead of, becoming an organization unto ourselves, we thought that would really, create a much more robust situation. So we're really excited about that.
I really hope that your group will consider moving into tree planting as well, because we need a lot of help.
Well, and I'm excited to be on this commission, and now, obviously a member of Save Our Trees, and now part of Watershed. So it's, that there's so many things to bring together. So.
And I'm wondering if I was thinking about this when I was watching you guys get your citation the other night. I think I may have mentioned this early on when we were having discussions about your group forming and what it should look like and how it should move forward. And, the groups I was connecting you to, including Watershed Stewards, was whether you could be eligible for city grants, any city grants.
Yeah.
I think you could be.
Yes. And that's something, we're going to definitely investigate, as well as actually, and again, with Watershed Stewards' help, applying for grants, from other arenas.
Okay,
for our
good.
work. Yeah. So we're really, very, very excited. And it's only been actually, we formed roughly a year ago, and I think we've made a lot of progress in a year. So we're excited about where we'll be a year from now.
Great job.
Yep. So, and actually, I don't know if you were at the council meeting on Monday, but the city has been, you all have been so supportive, you and Brian Callahan, and we really have we've been and also Park and Recs. I mean, it's just been very smooth.
Good. Yeah, well, you're really helpful to us and to Brian's urban tree program.
It's great. Good to hear.
All right. So moving right along with our agenda, we have Eric Lashinsky is here. You ready, Eric?
I am, yeah, thanks. It's worked out well because I had a little conflict earlier, but I'm here now, and it's a good segue talking about Save Our Trees to the presentation we have, which is about tree canopy and the comprehensive plan and how we're approaching it. So I'm glad Brian Adams is here, and Casey Ortiz is another comprehensive planner in our department. He's also here. So let me pull in. Casey put a lot of time into the presentations, which I appreciate. Let me share my screen.
And
we'll
while
get
you're doing
going.
that, if you could just maybe speak or give a little backdrop, what you all's type, your affiliations.
Oh yeah.
But also, I don't think we've ever done this before. I'd love to hear about, what made you get into this environmental career, this green career that you're in. Well, some of us do a bit of outreach and engagement and trying to, talk about getting more people into this industry. So if you could maybe share a little bit on that too. You and Brian, if you do speak, Brian.
I would just say my path was pretty circuitous. It wasn't, I would not say it was real direct getting into what I'm doing now, but I grew up in Annapolis. I think I was probably pretty inspired by the surroundings here, and being exposed to the Bay, and I was able to get my hands dirty pretty early on in school, and before being a planner, I was also an architect for a number of years, and I got pretty disillusioned with that profession. And so I went into planning out of really just kind of interest in having some more agency over just, defining the surroundings that I was in, and just trying to be more involved in kind of the greater urban cause, I'd say. So yeah, that's the brief story, I guess.
Appreciate that.
Yeah. Quickly, I grew up loving nature, playing outside. I've always had a love of nature, and I went to school. When I went to college, I started landscape architecture. I thought that was what I wanted to do. I wanted to design landscapes and outdoor spaces. And after, I think I was in my second year, I decided it was too much office work and I wanted to be outside more. So I looked into other degrees and discovered urban forestry, and took off from there. I like the municipal sector just because there's a lot of attention to saving trees, preserving trees, and I also like the planning aspect around it. So it works for me.
What are you looking to do from here? Next stage, of your career, or what's next for Brian Adams?
Honestly, I don't know right now. I'm here for at least a few more years. So
Cool.
I don't know. I don't have any big plans.
Awesome. How about you, Eric? Any future plans?
No, nothing. Just trying to finish the comp plan. That's
Hey, that is a future plan. All right, I'll let you
get that through.
let you get into stuff.
All right. Here we go.
Yeah.
So, one sec. Can you all see the presentation here?
Yep. Mhm.
Okay. So we are in the late stages of getting our draft comprehensive plan together. It's called Annapolis Head 2040. We do it every 10 years. The process started in late 2019, before I was even here, and then COVID hit in early 2020, and things got really delayed. Everything went virtual. But we're really close to having a draft, and I'm working towards end of May, and then the process kind of gets kicked over to the planning commission to run a sort of a 60-day review period for the plan, public comment period, I should say. And we'll be doing a lot of outreach during that period to enable people to understand what's in the plan and how to participate. And so I'm excited for that. But that's all kind of in advance of the plan going to the city council, who ultimately would adopt it, which might happen by the end of the year if we're lucky. But here to talk about tree canopy, I just wanted to say, you know, it's a fundamental, the foundational themes of the comprehensive plan are equity, health, and resilience. And this is sort of on the first page of the first chapter of the comprehensive plan, which you can see here. And so the idea is that every goal, every metric, every recommended action should support at least one of those three themes, if not all of them. And when you talk about tree canopy, it really does support all three of those: equity, health, and resilience. This diagram on the left, it's hard to see, but it does point to all the many values, benefits that trees provide us here in Annapolis or anywhere you're living. You know, shade, stormwater management, carbon sequestration, health benefits. They help our soil. You know, I mean, there's just innumerable benefits, and so sort of the return on investment of planting a tree is extraordinary for the city. And so we've put a lot of energy into figuring out what we could do within this comprehensive plan to move the needle on our tree canopy goals. And so what you're seeing on this slide on the right is a page from the comprehensive plan where we have a specific goal focused on tree canopy. And I would say tree canopy does factor into other goals in various chapters, but in our environmental sustainability chapter, we have this one very specific goal related to tree canopy where we have performance measures. You'll see no net annual loss of tree canopy, increase the city's tree canopy to 45% of its total land area by 2040. The third one is establish a consistent budget line item or is introduced in the city's capital budget for tree planting and proactive tree maintenance. And we were just talking about that issue of funding. And, you know, I think the capital budget represents our values as a city. The city council has to adopt it. You know, what's in our capital budget should be a reflection of our values. So that's an important thing to advocate for. And then you have all these recommended actions. I'm not going to read through them all because a lot of the presentation does go through these as kind of, they're actions, but they're also strategies to meeting our goals with tree canopy. So,
hey, Eric, could you put it in presentation mode so we can see the right?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Thank you.
No problem. Good call. Actually, I'm not actually familiar. Let's see if I can figure this out on Google Slideshow. There we go. Perfect. That should work. All right. That's better. So what we're going to talk about in brief is some context to how we've created background goal, our tree canopy goals and strategies in the past. Our methodology for determining the goals in the Annapolis at 2040 comprehensive plan, and then the actions for achieving the goals. And on the right, just an image of one of the many reasons why we are having a hard time keeping our tree canopy even where it is today. Erosion is one of those issues. That's Truxton Park, by the way, where we're trying to address the slope stabilization issues there. So, and Brian and Casey, please chime in if I'm missing something along the way here. So our last comprehensive plan, 2009, we had a specific goal in that it was 50% canopy cover by 2036. We kind of looked into where that came from. It came from this 2006 urban tree canopy plan. You can see the cover of that document on the right. And it was interesting to look at that because we sort of, knowing what we know now, we've looked at more recent data on tree canopy, and really we haven't moved the needle at all. It's pretty much still at 41%. It's probably gone up a little bit, it's gone down, but we're still pretty much at 41% coverage. And we tried to understand, well, why was 50% the number in 2006? And it seemed to come down to this quote here that the authors of the study included, which is this from this assessment in Montgomery County, where they found that around 45% tree coverage is associated with stream health ratings of good. And here, as we live very close to the water, most parts of the city, tree canopy has really immense benefits for our water quality. And so that was kind of the idea. It was, well, like, we need at least 45%. And then they basically said, well, if we can get up to 50%, that would be exemplary. And so we're having a hard time getting there. And so we, in this comprehensive plan, we're trying to be accountable. We're trying to be realistic while also aspirational. We think 45% is a better number to aim for. And so we're going to explain a bit about how we got there, and how we're going to achieve that. The most recent canopy analysis we conducted was in 2020. I should say Brian Adams manages this process with our GIS staff. University of Vermont has been doing this assessment in the past. They did the one in 2006. They did this one in 2020. They've done these for municipalities all over. They've really kind of found a niche in this.
Eric,
and what they
I'll just add real quick. I just noticed that, we were in 2006, it said we were at 41%. And as you go through this report here in 2017, we were at 41% after losing 2%. So this just goes to show you sort of the inaccuracies in predicting urban tree canopy and how methods have changed over the years. So the way they did it in 2006 presented one number, and the way it was done from 2011, 2010, where LIDAR came into play, made it a little more accurate, and that sort of bumped us up a couple of percent. So it's just one of the factors to take into consideration that, the way these analyses are done can move the percentage up and down a little bit.
Yeah, that's a good point. LIDAR, for those who aren't familiar, it's a type of aerial photography that shows us the depth of the landscape. It's basically bounces light off the surface of the landscape and gives us a sense of where tree canopy is and other things that are kind of higher in elevation. So we are going to be doing a new analysis with 2023 LIDAR photography soon. So we'll get a sense of what's actually happened in the last few years during COVID. We know a lot of people were doing yard projects, and that we could see additional loss of tree canopy. We're not sure yet, but one thing that is clear from this 2020 assessment is that the majority of the tree loss is happening in our single family residential areas of the city. So that's why I say when, during COVID, there could have been a additional loss. Brian is looking into new tools that can help us do these kinds of assessments more swiftly. This is one that he shared with us recently, which is called Tree Plotter. This is not Annapolis. This is Grand Junction, Colorado. It's an example of what they are sharing as a demo for this software, but they have all kind of different ways of attacking the data. This image shows the census block groups, and so you can really drill down into these very fine political units to kind of understand which parts of the city are having the most tree canopy, which have the least. And you know, a lot of times when we're talking about equity, we're talking about political representation and demographics. And so this tool could be really helpful. I think Brian's going to explore it more, but
yeah, and I'll add that the really nice thing about that canopy, their canopy software, is if you commit to like a yearly subscription, they actually update your data every 2 years. So rather than wait the 5 or the 10 years between analysis, you can sort of keep a pulse on what's going on every couple of years. So it's a much better way to sort of measure where your canopy is going.
right. So what we learned in the most recent analysis, this is kind of, I already touched on this, but where the canopy is gaining, where it's being lost, you can see the red is where we're losing it. It's really scattered. But again, throughout all the residential areas, you can see those red specks, and then the gain is pretty limited to some of these. It's hard to see across the city, but you can see some in the south parts of the city and areas that probably have significant conservation areas already. There may have been some additional planting in those areas.
I think what this really shows you is how quickly loss happens and how slowly our gains will happen.
Yeah. And then this analysis also looked at, from a zoning perspective, where are what's the loss specifically in those development zones, how we regulate development in the city based on land use. And so this larger dashed box area shows all of the residential zoning districts on the left side, and you can see the loss in each of those districts is pretty severe. All these districts, the main difference between them is the density of the homes. The R1 is our least dense, and our R4 is our most dense, which is still not very urban, but more urban. And then up here, you can see the C1 and the C1A are the downtown residential districts. So just more documentation on where we're losing the tree canopy. So kind of getting into, well, how are we going to address gaining canopy, and what are our options? We did the analysis. We started by looking at the overall land area of the city, excluding the Naval Academy. Annapolis Middle School is this triangle right here that is technically not part of the city. Probably should be, just for simplicity's sake. But so it's about 4,500 acres of land in the city. Of that, right now, we have about 876 acres, or around 41% of Annapolis is covered with urban tree canopy. So you can see that in the green hatched areas here, somewhat light, and some of that does we're showing some of it in the Naval Academy and middle school area as well. If you look at the area that's currently covered by tree canopy, as well as impervious surfaces, roads, homes, other buildings, we end up with about 73% of the city's land area is covered right now. And so we're looking for the places that aren't covered, where we could feasibly plant. And that's what got us to this amount, this 26.8% of the city, or around 1,200 acres. And this was in 2017. Things might have changed a bit, but this is based on the most recent data we had. And, we're looking to break this plantable space down further. So it's important to think about plantable space as not area that is necessarily easy to plant in, it's just available. So, not every park can be completely reforested. not every backyard can be completely reforested, but those are places where strategically we have opportunities. They're sort of not necessarily spoken for, so to speak. So we broke it down further within that kind of plantable space. The residential, we think we can do about 18% of the city land cover, or a little under 700 acres in total. Commercial plantable space, meaning properties that are zoned or identified for commercial uses, retail or office. We think we could do about a little under 4% of the city's land cover in new tree canopy, or around 173 acres. And then in open space, which is parks, conservation areas, for the most part, we can do around 7% of city land cover, or 315 acres. And so when you put those all together again, what we're looking at is again this 1,200, around 1,200 total acres. Not something that we can fully plant, but that's the sort of opportunity area, and it is heavily residential. You can see in the bar chart on the bottom. So that's really one of our major opportunities. So from that analysis, we came up with, I'm going to share 6 strategies or actions that we think could really help us reach the 45% tree canopy goal. I'm going to start with this legislation to expand the range of tree replacement in the critical area from 100 feet to 1,000 feet. So here's a view of Spa Creek taken from the headwaters near Bates Middle School is off to the left here. We have a pretty extensive critical area in the city. You might be familiar with the what that looks. So we have a map on the next slide, but it's a buffer. It's basically a more regulated area of the state, the Chesapeake Bay watershed, I should say, where within Maryland, where we are regulating development within 1,000 feet of the water, but only within the 100-foot buffer from the water do we have a pretty strict tree replacement rule, which is 1 for 1. So the idea is to expand that to 1,000 feet, the full critical area boundary. So this is a view of what the critical area looks like in Annapolis. The dark line represents that 1,000-foot radius from the water line, and then you can see the areas within that critical area where the bright green, where we have opportunities in residential, commercial, open space to replant, to add canopy, and that's around 9%. So it could be significant. I think there's generally consensus that this is really a prime place to have value with our tree canopy, given it's sort of the riparian edge of the city, has value to our waterways, and so it's a pretty big idea, I think. Second, protect heritage trees. This is something that a lot of other jurisdictions have. I was living in Austin, Texas previously. They have a heritage tree ordinance. I include the definition from their code here, so you could see how they define it. Heritage tree means a tree that has a diameter of 24 inches or more, measured 4.5 feet above natural grade, and is one of the following species. We would have our own species native to this region. But the value here is in sort of saying, well, there's certain trees that are hard to replace. They add value to the city in all kinds of ways. We should be working around them or moving them that was something you'd see in Austin quite a bit, is just enormous trees getting moved to save them. But this is an example on the right of a project that got approved recently on Bay Ridge Road near Edgewood, near the giant food supermarket. It's a senior living facility, and they really designed it around an existing heritage tree that's there. You can see there today. So we'd see more development like this potentially with a heritage tree ordinance. We could do more to incentivize residential plantings in basically any residential community. You just heard about the Replant Annapolis program, which is awesome. You know, it's modeled after the same program in Anne Arundel County. We need funding to do this, but there's a lot of interest out there in planting trees. We just need to be more organized and have the funds to assist, and staff or volunteer help is huge. So doing more of this in more places would have a huge impact. And trying to be more, we could be strategic about where these planting. If we know of a community where there is inadequate tree canopy, we can target certain neighborhoods, places where there heat islands exist, or there's you know, a documented shortage of trees. We could put funds into those places and assist. So this is, I guess, would be a good example. This image here at the Saltaire community that Brian worked on a planting there recently along Hilltop Lane, right across from Pip Moyer. And so the idea of having more funding could also lead to more tree giveaways, both for organized groups, but also just individual homeowners who want to plant trees in their properties or in other kind of community spaces. And, you know, these kinds of tree giveaways, I've seen them to be extremely successful in other places. We could do more in this area, and we've done giveaways in the past through Arbor Day Foundation and Replant Annapolis, but we could certainly do more. Talked about Save Our Trees. It's been great to see the organization evolve, and you know what Brian has shared with us, and I've seen it, you know, personally, is in a lot of cities that are successful in expanding their tree canopy, they do have a dedicated nonprofit partner, an advocacy organization that is really helping to advocate for the cause, coordinate volunteer labor, bring in funding, and really kind of dedicate to the cause. And so to see Save Our Trees evolve, become a program with Watershed Stewards Academy is great. It's sort of on that trajectory. And I think I would echo what Brian said earlier about be awesome to see the group move more into planting trees as well as, you know, removing invasives. Both are important, but preservation and new planting. And then finally, I know this is a big request from Brian, and I hope we can move towards this, but having an urban forest master plan for the city would really enable us to become more strategic about how we want to build up our tree canopy. This is an example from Cambridge, Massachusetts, just one precedent I found that I thought was a good precedent. And, you know, in this plan, we could have just a range of helpful information to make sure that we're investing our dollars strategically and getting the most return on the funding that we have. So that's the presentation. I hope we can have some discussion, hear your thoughts. I think we're interested in any input you might have.
Sure, thank you. Very comprehensive. I'll leave it open to the group now to comment, questions.
Hey, Eric and Brian, this is Jackie. So I mentioned the tree canopy during the last Environmental Matters Steering Committee meeting, and that the goal may be changed from 50% to 45%. And I think they would appreciate this presentation as well, the steering committee. And there were some strong feelings about changing the goal. And to that effect, supporting legislation to protect specimen trees and backyard trees that are not along a right-of-way.
Mhm. Yeah, our plan is to go to their next meeting, or I've even, it might end up being a special meeting if for some reason the May meeting doesn't happen. But yeah, I've reached out to Alderman Savage to get on their agenda. So
Okay, good. All right.
thank you for sharing that.
I have one observation, and that is the potential for street trees. You know, when you see a plan like this one from Cambridge, you can see where, you know, a lot of the trees are along streets, and that's where a lot of historic neighborhoods kind of get their beauty and their just identity. And I think that I know there's a lot of right of way that's very narrow, but I almost question why leave out the right of way from the possibilities here, especially when it comes to some of the newer developments that are happening. I think that should definitely be included, and some requirements for having, you know, the kinds of cross sections that we've seen in other places with a certain width sidewalk and street trees. So that's my only comment, but everything else looks great.
I will
That's
say,
a good.
yeah,
Go.
and I agree completely. I think, and maybe we didn't really include it because we do feel like on new developments, our planning and zoning, we're doing a pretty good job of enforcing and making people put in silva cells and put wider strips in, planting strips, and make them, you know, give them enough soil volume for street trees to thrive. But as you mentioned, a lot of our right of ways are very narrow. And I've had trouble over the years establishing trees along some of our right of ways. I still plant trees in the right of way, and I would love to increase that. And it is definitely an area we need to focus on, as well as, you know, the residential open space.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Brian and I have talked. I mean, we have a street tree master plan that's somewhat outdated, and I feel like with the urban forest master plan, we could really get an updated version of that is more detailed in, you know, what we'd like to see. You know, do we update the, you know, approved street tree species and provide, you know, new guidelines and planting? I think, you know, that could be definitely part of that plan.
So Eric and Brian, the city council acknowledges again and again that the trees are important for all the many reasons you've outlined and more. But year after year, do not fund our urban forester properly with tree planting, the proper tree planting budget, or tree maintenance budget. So what steps are planning and zoning doing this year? What kind of enhancements are you asking for? Are you asking for adequate funding this year? And are you asking for funding for the tree urban master plan? It's something that I started talking to Brian back in 2018 about, but he never had, you know, the capacity because it was just Brian doing everything, and we didn't have funds to pursue it. So I was wondering what plans we have for moving this forward.
So, you know, my intention would be for the urban forest master plan to sort of come out of this whole discussion and presentation, and hopefully we get more buy-in from the council, because I agree with you. I hear a lot of talk about how important it is, but I don't see it come through in the end. Related to funding, I've asked for more than I've ever asked for this year, which includes specific tree planting money, invasive species management money, and tree maintenance money. And we'll see where that goes. Again, I've requested it.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate that and the effort you put into it. I think that should be part of the presentation that you make to the Environmental Matters Steering Committee as we go into this budget process. It needs to be more than just lip service. They need to, if we want this to happen, it needs to be funded so that planning and zoning can make it happen.
I can tell you from sorry, Eric.
Go.
Just real quickly that the cities that we are seeing be successful in increasing urban tree canopy have a lot of support from the community, but also from their council members. And almost all of them have significant funding for their programs. Enough staff that people can focus on certain things and not sort of do it all at the same time. And most of them have a really good strategic plan laid out, such as an urban forester master plan that really, it lays out where the money needs to be spent, what departments need to be helping with this, what changes need to be made to code it. It's very comprehensive and covers all of that. And it's really what needs to be done if we want to see the kind of increase that we've, set ourselves up for. I think even to achieve what we're asking for now for 45% is going to be a lot of work. It won't just come from things the way they are currently.
Yeah, I was shocked, in looking at some of the other jurisdictions out there that are comparable to Annapolis. Just we're at a number that's actually well above average. Frederick, Maryland, for example, is only like 20%. Kind of blew my mind. Burlington, Vermont is right around 42 as well. At Cambridge, Massachusetts, definitely more urban, but they're about 36, 38, I think. So it's, I feel like the message to sort of hold what we have, really try to preserve what we have has to be in there as well. I think there's a mentality that I don't know, we need to plant more, but preservation is really important to not lose ground on this. Other questions?
Actually, it's Mary Ann Marbury. Eric, how, as the commission, how should we weigh in moving forward? Can we get a copy of the presentation and maybe get back to you with any additional comments after we've had some more time to digest it?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I would appreciate comments back, no later than like the third week of May. I mean, ideally like mid-May would be very helpful. I know you guys don't meet again probably till this time next month, but if there's any way to sort of consolidate any comments into a document that you could share, that would be helpful. But given the time frame on the comprehensive plan, I mean, I'm also open just to receiving independent comments, from the commission members, and just to make sure that we get everything. I think the Environmental Commission could also just be a big advocate on this topic and prepare a statement or something. We're in a budget season. I mean, I think to have the commission vouch for these priorities, is really important. It helps, I think if the council hears from you.
That's great. Yeah. Thank you.
Jeremy, do you have a question?
It's really helpful to see that potential tool you have to streamline some of the analysis going forward. I'm curious though, out of the 1,200 potentially plantable acres, have you already kind of accounted for utilities like above or below ground in any way? Do you have that kind of data? Because I'm sure that will ultimately have to factor in, but I'm not sure if that makes any real difference in the numbers.
It actually makes a huge difference.
Mhm.
So that is one of the big problems that is not mentioned in this presentation, but I've had some recent experience with having available trees to be planted on city property. And I was not able to acquire approval from the other departments to plant these trees. They don't want open spaces planted for various reasons. So all of those acres that are unplanted, you know, I don't know what fraction of those will actually be approved for planting, unfortunately. Even Park and Recs, you know, they've got open areas that they want to keep open for various reasons. Public Works, you know, a lot of different parcels I've looked at in the city that are open that I want to plant trees. I've been, you know, they don't want trees there because they've got an easement or they've got a stormwater easement, they've got a drain, they've got utilities. So those are not factored into this. And they're a huge issue for actually getting this done.
Thanks for that. Bigger issue than I was thinking.
Yeah, I almost feel like messaging that we might share with the Environmental Matters Committee that, well, I know some of the council members are probably aware of this, but it's just the cost of planting the trees, the due diligence, the maintenance, you know, the establishing the tree, and it's maybe helping them understand where the money goes would be helpful, and just the challenge of doing it might give them some more understanding of why you're asking for the funds you are, Brian. You know?
Yeah, it's a good point because a lot goes into it because we're not, you know, what we are not doing reforestation planting where you would, you know, go out in a field, an open field, and you plant, you know, a bunch of small trees and you put shelters around them and you let them be and you water them every few years. But these are urban tree plantings where we're dealing with utilities. We've got sidewalks. You need growing space, sufficient growing space, and then you've got maintenance. You know, you can't just put the trees in and leave them. You've got to follow up with watering. And so it gets very expensive. It really does to do it right. And it's especially challenging in an urban area like we are in. And I think this goal that was set in 2006, I think a lot of this really wasn't accounted for.
One of the things that has been done, and I'm sure you all have talked about this, but is having a mitigation fund. So instead of the 1-for-1, you can have that up to a certain point. I mean, I don't know how it gets created, but, you know, like just starting to get a mitigation fund. I mean, does the city already have that? I actually don't know.
Yeah, so there's a few different ones. There's a mitigation fund for forest conservation. But it has been our practice to never accept that money, that we always want the trees put back on site. We don't take fee in lieu really for forest conservation. Now we do take fee in lieu for critical area from development projects. And that is the money I've been using to plant trees primarily because I haven't been given the money in the budget. I've been using fee in lieu money to plant trees. So we do have that. And it is being used for tree planting.
And I imagine if it expands to 1,000 feet, then that would increase.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Paul, did you have anything? Good evening, Paul. Yeah, we can't hear you, Paul. Still can't hear you. Nope, still not working. We'll try to figure out. While he's trying to figure that out, we'll come back to you while you try to figure that out. But great job presenting and kind of delivering what the future next steps are in this beautiful process. I'll tell you, I met with the new DNR secretary yesterday in his office with Daryl Anthony to talk about just exactly all the stuff you just brought up, and how, you know, DNR and his new his new role, how that's going to play a part, and not just for the state, but also for the city, you know, being as though headquarters is really centralized in Annapolis. I told him that I felt like a lot of the things happening in the city should be very exemplar example of what, you know, is expected outside of the realms of the city and other parts of the state. And so maybe that's something to consider. He seemed to be very open to wanting to make a culture of open door in his new administration over the next X amount of years. So maybe that's something we could all set up. And he also mentioned not working in silos. So he hit the buzzwords, and so maybe we can capitalize on that and kind of use this as an opportunity to use the new secretary as a means to open up a larger door to state, city, county involvement in regards to our resiliency issues and challenges, because it's a big need, you know, what the county's doing in Anne Arundel County in regards to their tree canopy and water access plans and open space and stuff. I feel like, you know, things should, you know, there's some greater work we can do to connect those worlds. So
I'll just
That's a
add on that note that speaking of funding, there's a lot of money coming towards urban forestry over the next 5 years. Part of the Inflation Reduction Act that was passed, I believe, last year has contributed a lot more money to the DNR and the American Forest funding, the Forest Service, and on the magnitude of, like, you know, it's like 10 times what they've been getting per year. So if we could get the infrastructure in place to have, you know, groups that could accept grant money and work on projects and apply for these grants, we could really make some progress over the next few years if we've got, you know, if we've got the infrastructure in place to accept it and be able to handle the money.
That's one thing my consultant firm, R. Associates, has been doing, which is connect. And you're familiar with, Brian, with what we've been doing. Basically, is connecting and coordinating, you know, different organizations to go for some of these funds. You know, preferably minority-owned businesses, Black and brown businesses, people that have been kind of not in the loop of this economic structure for the past. So we're going to go to Jeremy. I'm sorry, I see you in there.
Well, and just on that subject, I wanted to note that EPA and I believe with the Department of Transportation have launched Thriving Communities Technical Assistance Centers throughout the country. And there is one for the Mid-Atlantic region. And, you know, that's going to be $10 million going to the National Wildlife Federation and several other partners, including Morgan State, University of Maryland, to assist community organizations or others interested in getting infrastructure funding and this potential grants that exist out there. So that's definitely a resource where we can point community partners to. Like, I don't know how it would work because this was a pretty recent announcement, but that's definitely a resource we want them to plug into.
Yeah, great point. Great point. It makes a lot of sense. Yeah, you know, that's a. I have to check back in with you, Jeremy, to try to get some more girth on that. And even recently, we facilitated a grant that was recently awarded with called the Connector Group for the Chesapeake Bay Trust, and that's their community-based organization capacity building initiative. And we just got announced today that we were selected. So we'll be doing that work as well. You know what I mean? But I was slightly aware of what you're referring to it with the EPA. But I'll definitely look into that a little bit more. I feel like I've ran across a couple links that you may have shared on that. Good. Paul, how we doing, Paul? Okay. All right, we still can't get you. Maybe we could maybe try hopping off and hopping on. You may have missed the link where it says connect to audio. That's probably what happened. Yeah, so I would maybe try leaving and hopping back in. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thank you all for sharing this great news. So what we'll do, or I assume that our next steps here, Eric, are going to be for us to give you some feedback on some of this, correct?
Yeah, I can email the presentation to you so folks can look at it closer.
Good.
But
it'd be really cool if you had like a Google form or something like that, something simple that you could send out that's specifically for AEC, where you could have some questions there for us, and we could go in, we can just fill it out ourselves, each individually. That way we can review it and give our feedback right in there. So maybe some spaces for comments, but also just if you have some real direct questions, you know what I mean?
That's a great idea. Yeah, I think we could definitely do that.
That way it will populate all those responses in one space for you. I know what it's like doing what you do. So getting those—
Work smarter, not harder.
Yeah, getting feedback in one location is a lot easier than checking a bunch of emails,
Yeah, right.
Paul, you there? Still can't hear you, Paul. So yeah, that's something we can try to look into, and maybe give us a little timeline for what you want, maybe by our next meeting.
Yeah,
something like that. And Brian, did you have any next steps you needed on our end that you were? And I know you mentioned a few things too, as far as next steps or future activities.
Right now I think we're just sort of wanting to get this out there and get feedback, and then the next step would be to get in front of the council members and sort of get them to adopt this plan, and then once we agree to this, we can start looking at how we're going to achieve it.
Yeah.
But yeah, any support you want to provide for the budget, of course, is greatly appreciated.
Great. Yep, so we can do that. We can go to, we're very comfortable with going down to City Hall.
Yeah, that's what I was. That's probably the most direct way to do it, is just to testify.
Yep.
Yeah.
So if you want to coordinate something that we're at a particular upcoming meeting where you could, if you want to start an email that says, hey, if you all could come to this, or anyone that can make it to this particular meeting, here's what I would love for you all to go and advocate for or testify around or about, that we can do that, especially at the budget meetings that they have. I think that would probably be the best space for it. We could even draw up some language, that we could speak to, that we can draft, and over the next month, we could finalize that as a statement from AEC that speaks to some of that. That way, when we go to speak, we can hand them a one pager that kind of speaks to what we're speaking to. I know that can be helpful for the council in taking into consideration our feedback. So pretty sure we could coordinate something like that in our email thread and finalize that by a particular meeting, and then attend as many of us as possible, and then give them that document. So you're gonna say something, Brian or Eric? Okay.
No, that sounds good.
All right. Well, I'm not gonna hold y'all up from dinner, so y'all are more than welcome to peruse around about the rest of your night. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having
Plans
me.
look great. It looks like things are coming along pretty well. So we'll be continuing to stay in touch in the future.
All right. Yeah, we'll
got it.
send that presentation in the Google form out. That was a great idea.
Yeah, and if you send it to me, I can make sure it gets to everybody, or something like to that effect.
Great.
You got it. All right.
Thank you all.
everybody.
Thank you again. We're moving right along. In our agenda, we have next to talk about our AEC priorities. Does anyone know what Allison left off at as far as our discussion and approval of our 2023 AEC priorities? Because I missed the last. Does anybody remember maybe where she met?
She took a list, but
I have the document. Has everyone seen the document? The 2023 AEC priorities. I believe I put it in an email with the agenda.
I think I missed that email.
Okay.
I got one email from you that had the links to the news about the funding. But then I didn't see an email about. Let me look again.
And your email is what's your email real quick?
JL Janice, JLJAN.
I got it. Yeah. I just forwarded it to you.
Okay, thanks.
So yeah, it looks like that's our 2022 priorities. But we have a 2023 priorities out there as well. So I'll make sure everyone has touched that. But what we're trying to do is vote on that. We're a little behind on it. So by our next meeting, maybe we can look to vote or just make some motion with that. And then we will divide up our different skills and kind of backgrounds with different aspects of those priorities. And then we will report out each month on those priorities. Does that make sense for our new members?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think everyone else is pretty much familiar with that process. How you doing today, Bill?
Doing good. Sorry I'm late.
No problem.
Minor disaster at work, but we're all good.
Good. So I'll leave this time for each of us or any of us that want to report out about things in our ward or in our community or just things on our radar. I know, Bill, you've kind of spoke about different things. So does anybody want to have anything on their chest they want to share? Or
the only thing I would say is that Terry McKenna from Save Our Trees reached out to me looking for a contact for the NAAA at the Navy Stadium, because she knows that I live right next to the stadium and there's some ivy infestation and some other potential things that we can do to clean up the Naval Stadium grounds. So she's hoping to coordinate with him. His name is Bill Givens, and potentially even get some mids to come out and help us remove some ivy from the stadium grounds.
Okay. So Bill, you can put her in touch with me. Well, who from Save Our Trees? Because I have most of their emails anyway.
Terry McKenna.
Oh, I have Terry's. Okay. Yeah, I can put her in touch with somebody at the Navy.
Okay. Yeah, I usually go to Bill for all of my complaints and requests. But yeah, if you know somebody else, that's great.
And then I was going to mention that I know this group is extremely interested in the plastic bag bill, and that Allison made a presentation recently to the Environmental Matters Committee. I sent a message to everybody, I think last week or the week before, when notified everyone the county was going to address the plastic bag bill in the county last 2 Mondays ago, and they deferred a vote. It's still pending before the Anne Arundel County. And I was asked about it actually today by members of city council, and where they stand, and where the city council stands is that Alderman Savage introduced a bag bill several years ago, must have been 2020, but then during the pandemic withdrew it so not to make place another burden on the city businesses during the pandemic. And that's where it was left. Meanwhile, Anne Arundel County has now introduced their own bag bill and waiting to see what that comes out in the near future. But as far as the city has not reintroduced a bag bill.
Yeah.
I have
Yeah.
something from Ward 6.
Mhm.
So there's been a couple public meetings on the Eastport Terrace redevelopment and planning process. And I think it would be really good for this group to have a presentation on where that planning's at so we can get some comments in now. It's pretty critical timing for getting some of the ideas that are in this group and some of our objectives just on the minds of the planners as they form the roads and parking lots and other impervious surfaces in particular. I don't know.
So are you saying like a formal document or formal statement memo maybe, or?
Yeah, or even if they could just, I don't know if this is typical, but join us for one of these sessions and just kind of do a little, here's where we're at, here's what we're thinking. Or it could be simply a summary slides and then a Google form to give our feedback. I don't know how informed people are on it and how much information this group would need to be able to make good comments.
Okay, and the contact person for that probably is that it's a consultant firm.
Yeah, it's a consultant firm that's doing it. I can try.
I've been to those meetings, so I'm familiar with that. So that's a great point. And I think that's definitely in order or due or something that is definitely would be under our purview. So luckily, we some of us already we know about it, which is great. So
Yeah.
Next thing definitely would be that. I couldn't make that last one. So you did make that last
no, and that's why I want to take this opportunity to bring it into this group. Because I went to the very first one and first two, and then these last two I missed. So
good. All right, so I'll put that on the thing. Anybody else have anything? And then also, Jackie, I was wondering, is there any update on the no dumping legislation? Which, are you familiar with that?
No, you're gonna have to enlighten me on no dumping legislation.
Well, in the waterways cabinet, it was a whole presentation on the no dumping in the Chesapeake Bay zone.
Oh, in the no discharge zone.
Yeah, no discharge.
Okay, yes. So the no discharge zone went into effect last July. And DNR provided the city and the county and all the marinas with information about you can no longer treat and release. So you already couldn't pump straight out into release into the bay or anywhere in the harbor or any waterways, but the treat and release systems were still operational until the no discharge zone went into effect. So everyone must now use a pump out.
Gotcha.
And that this is we are considering doing additional public education because we're in the spring boating season now. In addition to the brochures that we have from DNR, I've talked to the harbor master about posting more prominently on the door of the harbor master office where people come to check in when they come into the city dock, and making it more explicit, the no discharge zone information more explicit on their landing page for the harbor master and the registration forms for reserving space at city dock.
Got it.
I think it needs to be a refresher. It's been a year. Last year was the first year, and a bit more public education.
And I recall in the past, Archie Trader was working on this environmental education tour thingy with the school, with the communities and HACA and environmental organizations. Is there someone else, I believe, is now taking Archie's place? Is
Mhm.
there a continuation of that pitch, or is that continuing, or is it? Do you know anything about that?
So Director Johnson came on board about a month ago, Rosalind Johnson, and I have mentioned to her that the continuing environmental education programs. I know that the Severn River Association, who had partnered with Archie Trader in the past in getting youth out on the Severn and doing water quality sampling and teach them about the ecology of the river, that program will continue. And also the Severn River Association has just applied for a grant, which I provided a letter of support for what they're calling Operation Osprey. And that is to document the number of osprey that are living on the Severn and the increase or decline in their populations, because the osprey, who are completely dependent on fish for their sustenance, are a good eco indicator of the Severn's health. And as part of that program, they want to integrate youth, especially lower income youth, and train them and work with them to get them out on the water and help be part of the database collection and take documentation, video, etc., of the osprey, get to know them, how people, what we do on land impacts the way that they live, and make it part of an education program, but especially bringing in lower income youth into that program. So I'm not sure, something I can follow up with Director Johnson more on is other programs that Rec and Parks plans to either initiate or continue with youth of all ages. I know from their programming goes from kindergarten through, I think, through middle school at least, and I don't know if it continues on through high school.
Okay.
So I'll make a note.
Let me know if you want any help on that, or any support or input or tips or anything around that, because I can, or any of us would love to, we can add some input there.
Well, maybe you and I can get together with her,
Okay.
the two of us, Randy.
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so moving right along here, we have the unfinished or future business. I think we just kind of went through some of that. So does anybody have anything else as far as unfinished business or wrap up discussions, last thoughts, next steps, next meeting? Next meeting, we're gonna try to get this agenda out a week, or at least a week before. So
Yeah, I was going to ask about the Resilience Authority, because I know now that they have Matt Fleming on board, and I saw something in the project updates Racine just sent, about asking 10 million for City Dock, but just curious, like, if there's any other general updates, since it's been a while since we talked about it.
Yeah, so the Resilience Authority is up and running. The board was seated in January. They worked on some of their operating procedures. That most of the work has been around that. So we're now starting to get into the real work of the Resilience Authority. They are meeting at St. Luke's tomorrow afternoon. The board is, and some of the city and county staff, and to show them the St. Luke's Restoration of Nature project, and what, as an example of the type of projects that help with water quality restoration. And then we have a meeting of the board afterwards with the City Department of Public Works and around the City Dock presentation, because the city is making that top priority for the city ask, that $10 million that you mentioned, Jeremy. And but that's not the only ask we will be making, but that's the first one. And what Matt Fleming, the director, is planning to do, there's an advisory committee, that non-voting, that I'm on, the directors of Public Works, Planning and Zoning, Office of Emergency Management, and the same are partners that over in the county that share those positions as well. And we're part of the advisory committee. So that is going to start meeting quarterly during work hours. Matt will convene with us and get our needs about what we would like to see help with funding and projects we would need them to help us move and what our challenges are, what our opportunities are, and where we see the Resilience Authority helping us. So that's all going to get going in the next month.
Okay.
Thanks for that.
And also, there's a meeting tomorrow. This is kind of out of the city limits, but at the Broadneck Council of Communities is hosting a meeting in Cape Sinclair at their community center, where they'll be hosting Senator Sarbanes to talk about some of the environmental and outdoor activities and access. So if anybody wants to come to that, it's tomorrow, Thursday. And if you want, I can send the specific address and time and things.
Oh, and Hawkins Cove is finally starting to move. RFP, we shortlisted. There were about 7 companies that responded to the RFP for Hawkins Cove, and we worked as city staff and finalized a short list last week. We'll probably meet again to talk about the short list, and I'd say in May we will select a contractor to begin the assessment and design phase, which is phase 1 of that project. So that project, we call it still Hawkins Cove, but it's much larger than that. It's turned into a whole trail revamp, education, and tying into improvements to make at Truxton as well. So we did that with Chesapeake Bay Trust funding, which was matched by a private family foundation, and then last year obtained a NIFWIF grant in the form of $500,000 for to supplement our assessment, design, and partially fund construction on Hawkins Cove.
And were any of those that submitted of the 7, were any of minority-owned companies, do you know?
There was at least one. There were 3 that were women-owned companies, and I believe one of them was a woman-owned minority company. They're all starting to blend on me right now, Randy. They're
Yeah.
long proposals. 56
Yeah, I can imagine.
proposals. We had some really good ones. Some really big companies that have done really big things, and smaller companies, and all very well qualified companies.
Well, I hope that you're considering, and whoever's reviewing those are considering companies that are from historically or from the area, have people in their staff and in their network that are from the area, and that
Yeah, there's quite a few that-
understanding of those public housing communities, and know the grassroots organizations that operate in those communities already. Because if they don't, it may present a challenge where they'll be, seeking to find out these things when technically I feel like they shouldn't be selected if they don't, that's something that should be considered, weighed as in that decision.
So in response to that statement, I want to say at least 4 of the companies had staff or were based in the Annapolis area and had done, almost all of them had done extensive number of projects in the Chesapeake Bay area, and including Anne Arundel County. Some had worked already for the city of Annapolis and Anne Arundel County and surrounding counties, had worked with companies that we're very familiar with that have done work in the city. And most of these applicants are consortiums. There's a lead applicant, and then they might have a landscape design firm that they're working with, a communications firm, an engineering or surveying firm. There's at least 3 different companies that are, there's a lead applicant, and then they have other groups working with them. And part of this assessment and design phase will be some more community meetings. And so that's a criteria that we're looking at, because it's part of the RFP, is experience in conducting community meetings, doing stakeholder outreach, et cetera. And many of these companies are already familiar with Annapolis, and to the extent that we need additional support to them to make sure they're reaching all the right groups, that's what the city staff is there for.
Yeah, but not just familiar with Annapolis, but familiar with, Black and brown communities in it.
Yes, that's what I mean.
There's a big
Familiar
difference.
with all the
Yeah.
stakeholder groups.
Or even that that they look like the community that they're going to be serving, right?
Well,
Because that's a
we-
best practice.
We will try, we'll endeavor to do that, but we can't control the applicant pool. You know, we
Right,
put the RFP out, trying to make sure as many different groups are looking at it and trying to reach, check all the boxes and reach all the right people and to make it the best quality product that's most reflective of our community and our community's needs. But you know, as I said, we can't always control the applicant pool.
Right. Yeah. I'm just saying, I would hope that that would be a goal. That's something that
Yes.
you're to be reaching or seeking for is getting more, especially in projects and bids that are going to take place in more diverse communities. You know,
Definitely, for
have
this
that
project.
representation. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, it's about 8:42. Anybody got anything else? Fantastic. Okay, so I'm going to look to get this agenda out a little earlier next month. I'm going to send some follow-up emails to kind of cover some of the topics and next steps and action steps from tonight. And we'll keep shaking and moving and grooving. Thank you all for taking your time tonight. Thank you, Racine, for your help with coordinating information and sharing information. And just being a in between of information and great things. How was everybody's Earth Week? You know, Earth Day. I actually boycotted Earth Day this year. Not like boycotted, but I literally didn't do anything because my notion was that every day is Earth Day. You know, I get really tired of just having these huge, elaborate activities around Earth Day, and then the rest of the year is just like bland, you know. I wanted to take this time this year for Earth Day to encourage people to make every day Earth Day so that we can, you know, it's not like a Earth Day thing, you know, it's like, you know, more consistently throughout the year. So I didn't do any speakings. Actually, I did speak at one place, but I really didn't do anything specifically. So I guess that's kind of like a boycott, right?
I agree with you though. Every day is Earth Day. The electric vehicle car show that Annapolis Green had scheduled for last Saturday on West Street it was canceled and it will be rescheduled. Don't have the rescheduled date yet because with the thunderstorms that came through, they had to cancel it.
Mhm.
So we have that coming up.
Cool. And I love that. You know, I'm really all about the fleets, and even with the government, you know,
Yeah, we have two
vehicles.
buses on order,
Yeah.
2 electric buses on order. We're looking at the electric ferry to purchase. They have the 2 little GEM golf cart circulators
Yeah.
that have been going around since last December, and we have the bikes and scooters, and we purchased 2 Chevy Bolts. One's being used by the Department of Transportation, and one is being used by the Department of Public Works right now.
Yeah, many of our communities that struggle from intense crime or lack of resources should really be flooded with programs that are teaching them certifications and electric management or maintenance of some of these systems, or even careers in that, because it's going to require just like any of our other environmental isms, it's going to require a particular workforce to be there for that industry. And what better way to bring a people up than to encourage them to get into sustainable careers, because they kind of go hand in hand. You know, it's like feeding 2 birds with 1 scone. You know, Jeremy knows what I'm saying. Sorry. Okay. All right. Well, that's all I have. Anybody have anything else? Any motion to close out the meeting tonight?
So
So motion.
All right.
I second that.
All right. Well, it's good to see everybody, and it's good to be back. It's good to see some new members. Good to see a full screen on the
Yeah.
camera here with all the faces. So
And thanks, Jackie, for all the updates.
Absolutely. Guys, call me, email me if you have other